Ladies and gentlemen, we're here ready for a great week. It's going to be a fantastic one. Mr. ABB, how you doing today?
Good, man. I'm not in the warehouse.
It's a darker mood.
Yeah, I'm down in my den, if you will, in my house, and you can see my saltwater aquarium back there if you're watching visual. And I got this weird villain lighting that's really accentuating my mustache particularly. So I kind of got a walrus vibe going today. So, it is what it is. But I'm doing well. How's that stuff going down in Alabama?
Dude, it's hanging out. It's hanging out. I literally, it's funny you mentioned your mustache because I was eating lunch and I was like, man, it is time for me to trim. It's that when the beard, there's no food you can eat. The beard doesn't get in the way. That's to me okay, it's time.
To me, when there's as much hamburger in my burger as mustache hair, then I know it's time.
Yeah, it's tough out there. It's tough out there.
But hey, I'm excited for our guest this week. Very cool guest. I always like having people on that are kind of they're disc golfers or they love disc golf, but they're kind of from outside of disc golf. We haven't had too many of those. Yeah. This one's particularly fun. So we'll let him give himself a little bit of an intro when we invite him in, but let's go ahead and grab him so we can get this episode on its way.
Let's go, baby. Welcome into the podcast. Andrew, how you doing today, sir?
I'm great. How are y'all?
Hey, we're doing super well. Thanks again for coming in. So just for our listeners, a little bit of backstory. The reason you're even on the podcast is you kind of are in your own world. We'll let you give your own intro in a second, but we were listening to, or actually Silas actually sent me over a clip of you over on the Funzy podcast with some of our friends over there. Mm-hmm. And you said you were the In the Bag fan, so we had to have you on. So thanks for coming on. Do you want to give our listeners kind of a little bit of background? Also, just notice your Trash Panda shirt. Love that. Do you want to give our listeners a little bit of a background or an elevator pitch on who you are and what you do?
Super quickly, I work for the MKBHD channel. It's a pretty big tech channel on YouTube. I host a podcast over there called Waveform. And if you happen to know that channel, Marquez plays extremely competitive Ultimate Frisbee. That's how I met him. I joined the channel 8 years ago, and I've had worse injury luck. So disc golf is my retired from Ultimate because I'm hurt, play disc golf now. So I've been playing for a year, and I love In the Bag because all the discs are super interesting and you guys talk about them all the time. So it's just a way to sit on my commute and hear about what kind of discs are out there.
Come on. What position did you play in Ultimate?
I was an offensive cutter most of the time.
Okay. Awesome. I played Ultimate. My
Still
background in
sometimes,
disc came from... Yeah, my background in Ultimate came from club level in college. And then I proudly say that I'm in disc golf shape, not Ultimate shape. It is two different worlds that we live in.
Same now too. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well,
one's easier shape to be in than the other.
Yeah. I am
for
not,
sure.
I'm not stressing out. And I played Ultimate. We had homecomings and things. And I came back and I was like, I think I might have a heart attack out here on this field trying to play.
Yeah.
When we are looking at your game, Andrew, we want people to get to know you as a disc golfer, truly. And so, how long have you been playing? When did you make the switch?
Sure. Probably a year and a half. I've had some friends trying to get me in for a while, but I like to say that hobbies are my hobby. So I knew I would get really into it. And I tried to delay that for as long as possible. I finally did it, and I was exactly right. And now I've ordered way too many discs and spend way too much time watching YouTube videos and being on Disc RPM all the time. So it happened, but I'm loving it so far. It's been a lot of fun.
Dude,
no other phrase has touched my soul like the phrase "hobbies are my hobbies." And Robbie, I think you can probably relate to that too.
Yeah, my wife gets on to me and she's like, Robbie, you don't have to monetize every one of your hobbies. You can just enjoy something to enjoy it. And I'm like, yeah, but I could also start a YouTube channel for it, and then that would be fine too. It happens. It happens. So we put you in a field, Andrew, and we said we're going to put a basket X amount of feet away from you. How far do you feel like you're consistently reaching it on a forehand and a backhand?
Yeah, because it's an open field, backhand's 325, 350, I feel pretty confident on. Coming from Ultimate, I have an extreme Hyzer release, which is something I'm working on. So like that gets significantly smaller in the woods. I need a lot of space to be able to do that. And like sometimes I can push further, but it gets way touchier when trying to get like a real flight out of a disc, not just straight Hyzer like the whole way. And then forehand, I feel like super comfortable up to 275, 300. I know I can push it further than that, but like on those, a nice Hyzer forehand, I feel really good about like 300.
Okay. I'm really excited to kind of dive into just disc selection at the top end. Really fascinates me because I feel like with that Hyzer play, looking at the bag even, you have some really understable options available to you. And I know that's for folks that come with like a lot of Hyzer. We end up on these like extremes. Like there's not a ton of neutral discs that end up in the bag because it's like I either want it to just stay on that Hyzer or I want it to get all the way over. So
exactly, yeah,
fascinating there. So let's talk putting green, because that is a skill that I feel like if anything doesn't translate, or maybe it does, we put you on the putting green and we're like, all right, we're going to have you do 10 putts from 15 feet, 10 putts from 25, and 10 putts from 40 feet. How many are you making in each station?
Yeah, I work on putting a lot, but it's in a garage, so it's always different, indoors, outdoors. And nerves, I'm ultra competitive, so nerves have hit me pretty hard in the couple tournaments I've been in. So I'd say like 15 feet, 8 out of 10. 25 feet, we're probably going down to like 5 or 6. And then 40 feet, I did this yesterday and I kept getting 3, but like I feel like that was a good day, so I'll say 1 or 2, to be honest.
Okay,
that's fair.
Hey, I'll bring you in when you say a good day. I'll bring you inside the you feel this like anyone in the content creation world feels this. So I shot a video yesterday that is about putting, and I was like, oh, for an intro, I'll just bang a 40-footer for the intro. Like I'll just be like, hey, I'm Robbie C. What's up? Here we go, and nail this 40-footer to start. And I am not kidding. It took me 20 minutes to hit one 40-footer, and I was like. What are we doing? Like Silas is just gonna have so much B-roll of me just like, Crawford, come on, dude. So
it reminds me of
I feel the good days.
For you Office fans out there, if you've ever seen like the Goodbye Michael episode where he's like, catch you on the flippity flip, and he's like trying to hit that backwards like free throw shot. That's what you did. That's what you did, Robbie. So Michael Scott feels you on that one.
Yeah. So I guess our final question before diving into the bag, Andrew, would be, what would you say is the biggest strength of your game?
I think for how long I've been playing, I think my distance is pretty solid, again, in a field. I also think because I like hobbies so much and I'm ultra competitive, I dive really deep into them. So I spend a lot of time working on things, probably like more so than I should be for it to just be a fun hobby. So I think I've grown pretty well in the short amount of time I've been playing. That also comes from having friends who are incredibly good and then immediately having to play against them. So I think my game's progressed pretty well to some pretty solid rounds for how long I've been playing that I'm proud of.
Dude.
For sure. And I would also say you're not really afraid of, and we'll kind of get into this, so I guess an unintentional segue, but there's some discs in here that like people are a little afraid of starting out, and I think you're going into them even with your like extreme Hyzer release. So I'm excited to hear kind of what these discs are going to do for you. Robbie, do you want to start at the top or bottom today?
Let's start at the top. I think the top is. I've got a lot of questions at the top end of the bag. So we're gonna talk fairway drivers. So we'll go drivers and then kind of hop, and then hit the lower speeds. Because I feel like the lower speeds are probably something that are pretty dialed. And you have a pretty traditional like mid range and down, which I like. I am curious what we're actually putting with when we get down there, but. Yeah, so starting at the top, you've got a Falcon, an Emperor, and a Destroyer. I guess I'm really intrigued what the Falcon does for you. Like, what shots are you throwing with it?
Yeah. That is like wide open field, absolute max distance with no worry left or right. I mean, like even if it goes off the line, if as long as it's an upshot after that. If I want to put a bunch of hyzer on it and just know it'll like just push a little further. But it's Halo, so it's a little more stable than the like -2.2. At least in my eyes, I definitely have a little nose up problem and obviously some hyzer issues. But when I hit that, it's definitely my furthest flying disc.
Okay. So then I guess jumping over, a lot of people, the Emperor, I always get confused between the Emperor and the Pharaoh because I know, or at least I believe they're both old destroyer molds. But I can't remember which. They're obviously different, but I can't remember which ones. From
what I've heard, I've heard the Pharaoh's the same as the Falcon.
Okay,
makes sense.
I think, and I love this whole like Innova makes the molds and gives them to other companies, and it's like this guess of what it is. But I heard it was Destroyer top, Shrike bottom, and I think they're the same. If that sounds right.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I do know that Dave is one of the like. It's funny because you have done a pace with Innova, and I forget why I'm blanking on his name. Brad, you may remember from Gateway, Dave McCormick.
Yep,
is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
Who are both like mad scientist Daves cut from the same cloth. Who are like, okay, we have 20 tops and bottoms, and what if we just monster mashed our way to some really fun molds?
What if we put a destroyer top on an AVR bottom? What does that do?
I'm here for that.
Me too.
You know what? As a Halo Pig wanter, I would take that mold, Brad, over Halo Pigs. That would be a blast.
Okay.
I'm not sure how it would fly, but it would be a blast.
Yeah.
Okay, so Emperor versus Destroyer versus Wraith. Those could all fill somewhat of the same slot depending on people's arm speed. So where do they differ for you?
I think there's probably some overlap. To be honest, the Emperor right now, I was lucky enough and Bedanza sent it over as like a care package because I helped him a little bit with some thumbnails and stuff. And it's really cool that it's the Team Infinite stamp. It feels a little more stable than my Destroyer right now, but my Destroyer is also from a friend, so is like been used for a bit. It's also flatter. So I like throwing it on forehand more hand than the Destroyer that I have, which has a little bit of a dome. I'm still not great in telling like what is really domey and what, but it certainly is domier than the Emperor. That's what I use those for, and those are both more stable than the Wraith. The Wraith is the first distance driver I ever bought, so it's well loved, and that's my most confident disc out of those four up there is the Wraith.
Yeah, and I mean, if you've had it for a year now, you get to feel that like there is, to me, few plastics that feel as good as seasoned Star. Like you get a really good beat-in Star.
Yeah.
Hits the soul. Okay, so if the Falcon is wide open field, where does the Maya slot in use-wise?
To get it to turn over and like push right on some distance. I had this. That's also very new. I haven't thrown too much with it, but there's this great hole at a park near me. I was doing a team challenge, and most people throw a roller on it because it's just got this big tree in front of you, but then a line of trees on the left. And I just happened to like get enough hyzer on it to stand up and then push around the tree in front of me, and then just keep pushing right until it's also Halo, so it's probably a touch more stable, and then just fade out nicely past all the trees I needed to get to into the open field. So right now it's like I want something that'll push right for as far as I can throw it. We'll see how long it actually stays in there.
Yeah. So kind of I'll lump this in so that way it's not like when we bounce back we have like these like big old question marks. So if you're stepping up to that shot, are you getting significantly more distance out of your Maya versus the Heat, or still too soon to tell kind of a deal?
The Heat is probably in there for like one hole right now, and I know that's not a good reason for a disc, but it's on my favorite course, which is a very tough course to play, and also a great course. Camp Tecumseh in New Jersey is like one of the best courses, and I live very close to it, so it's awesome. But it's like one of the hardest holes, the long version. You just need this shot that you can throw pretty hyzer because it's a tight gap to start, and then let it pan and keep panning right, because that's where the landing zone is to get through all the trees to the long basket pin. And it's hit it for me almost every single time. And what I love about that heat, it never fades out. It just always keeps pushing right. And it's worked a lot. It's also the first disc I ever found without a phone number on it. And it somehow stayed in my bag like almost the entire time.
Brad, I know you're like the heat is one of those discs where I mean, there's been multiple episodes where it's like Brad goes back to the heat and he's like, man, this is incredible. Like, are you feeling that heat desire again, Brad?
I love a heat like someone loves their grandma. I think that's really what it is. Like, I just have this like undying love. I just have so many fond memories. I just love the heat. I don't bag it. I don't want my grandma living with me per se, but I do love to visit it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I am. So, hey, is that the next in the bag stamp? Is just a heat with like a grandma on a rocking chair on it? I think that's what we need. But I love the heat, man. The heat's such a good disc. Why don't I throw it?
Dude, have y'all seen that not Infinite, it was the Innova stamp where someone, like, the internet joke was like this grandma got locked into a cage and they were
no.
they're not letting grandma out of the cage until Halo Vipers are released. And so Innova released Halo Vipers with the stamp that said free grandma.
That's funny. That I saw that, but I didn't get the reference. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
But no, heat's great. And I'm sorry. I think maybe I missed it, but the difference between the Maya and the heat for you is the Maya just going to have some fade at the end versus the heat.
I guess I didn't actually answer your question with that. It has a little fade, and I think I'm just putting it more in an open field where the heat is like a wooded course, right turning disc.
Yeah, it just has to. It cannot fade no matter what. That's your reliable one. Okay, and I guess like flip flopping, right? Is there a reason why you wouldn't say, okay, well, now I'm going to throw the heat on a little bit more hyzer and like let it fade, or will it just not fade no matter what?
I'm sure it could fade if I like rip it up in the air in an open field, but that's kind of why the Sphinx is in there. I know you don't want to get too much into fairway stuff right now, but the Sphinx has been my thing in there of like pushing, turning, but fading.
I see. Yeah, I was just wondering what is there a world where the Maya is just not there and maybe you have this TI heat and maybe you have a Z heat that's just like pretty fresh and it kind of covers the base of the Maya. So just a thought while we're on that, like kind of understable
the
side.
Maya could get pushed out of there. Yeah, Maya has no like deep connection in there. It's probably been in there for like 2 weeks in one round. So it's a newer test to see if I wanted extra distance understability wise.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It makes sense to me even on the fading, like, because people could look at the last two numbers and be like, oh, they're both -3.1, so they should have the same flight. They go a little farther. But I think you really touched on something pretty important, is that like you do have some nose issues. And so like if your nose angle is messing up, the faster you get that disc, the bigger the rim gets. It gets harder to keep those like understable discs actually staying on turn. Okay.
Yeah.
I was looking up facts about the Sphinx real fast because I was like, I know that it's also a Frankenstein disc. And what a funny combination. It is Valkyrie top with a Roadrunner bottom.
Weird.
So, what a time. So we'll come back to the Sphinx. So I want to jump down to mid ranges real quick. I'll ask this question. Would you consider a zone a mid range or a putter, or it truly lives in its category of its own for how you use it?
I'd call it a putter. I think I use it for a lot of like I don't know a shot that's too small that I'm like thinking it'll go to. I mean, I've certainly juiced it too far past a pin before, like thinking I didn't, but I use it if I just want it closer. I just like chip it more hyzer in the air if I can. And if I feel like anything closer than that is just a jump putt at that point, even if it's just a jump putt to, you know, land near the basket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I would categorize the zone in that world as well. I think a lot of people would, but then they're like, I see people that like won't bag a pyro, for instance, because they're like, well, I just have zones that basically do the same thing. So the pyro and the deflector, I feel like if you aren't on Team MVP, people sleep on the deflector. So, Andrew, give us the sales pitch. Why should more people be interested in the deflector?
Because it's impossible to turn over, and if there's ever a shot that like you need, I mean, if you need a forehand fade right, that's dangerous on the left or even deep. Like it's just a brick that's gonna fall into the ground. It's been awesome. I was using a pyro for a while, but it's gotten a little beat in, and I've gotten a little better at throwing it. So the deflector was like the just make sure this does not turn over, this does not go too far. This thing is 100% consistent.
Yeah, I say Team MVP because the person who like every time that I go to a pro event and I caddy, I walk away with like a little flavor of like, maybe I should check that out. Like the discs that made the bag from caddying for Sully at Worlds with were a soul and a zone. Both looked very appetizing after you use them. And yeah, you're thinking a guy who plays top 10 at Worlds throws in a soul. Incredible. The things he can do with the soul, amazing. But another friend who's on Team MVP, he uses a deflector that has Squirtle dyed on top of it. And I mean, when that man steps up with that Squirtle, I'm like, okay, it's going to be a sick shot. Like I'm with you. He's got so much forehand power, and he's still leaning on that. So, so Pyro's in fission plastic. So as you said, it's kind of seasoned in. So is it pushing closer? To
That's
that
in
Eclipse
Neutron,
X?
actually. I think.
Oh, Neutron. Okay.
That's my fault. It's not fission. Funny enough, I just bought the fission Halloween one because I love the pyros so much, and I wanted a flippier version of it. I haven't gotten to throw it yet. That's my fault. It's in Neutron. It's kind of everything you expect a pyro to be.
Yeah, no, and that's totally fair. So it's pretty stable. So is there a pretty large gap between your Eclipse Hex to that Neutron pyro right now?
I'd say so. Yeah, like it's always gonna fade on the pyro. The hex, depending on how I'm hitting it, will go straight, or it'll fade if I like really throw a hyzer on it. But the pyro is that one where you can kind of flex it a little bit and make sure it still fights out for you and gets a good skip too.
For sure.
So let's say you throw this new, you throw the new Halloween Fission pyro in there. What's your hope for it? Do you like, if not maybe a reality, but like man, I really hope it does blank for me.
If I'm being totally honest, I kind of wanted to just kick the hex out of the bag, and be like the really straight but always finish, like super seasoned pyro that I don't have to do as much work to. And I just like the hand feel of the pyro better than the hex.
That's fair. That's fair. So with an ultimate background, I always feel like that detour flight, the 5-5 -2-1, if I'm going to play with people and they don't have much of a background in disc golf, if they've got some familiarity throwing like lids and things like that, I love handing them a disc like this. Have you found the detour to be like a love at first sight? Is it it's grown on you? What's your relationship with the detour like?
It's I mean, it's obviously just got like great push, even with a like Hyzer release. Can be super straight. I'm working on the understability aspect of it because it's not as understable as like a. Well, I've thrown a soul. I've thrown some other more understable things, but I just like the hand feels so much better than like a fuse or my Dune. Or I know they're not all quite like the most understable ones, but they've always flown for me more understable than it, but I just don't like the really rounded feel of it where the Detour feels like almost a hex.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
It does.
With just a little more forgiveness, it always feels like. Because it's like, I think when MVP was designing that lineup, they were like, okay, we're going to go Hex into Detour, into Uplink, into Paradox, I guess would be like the spread.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. -1, -2, -3, -4. So have you tried the Uplink at all?
I've not actually. I'm always like a little worried about mids are where I start since I'm not powering up as much and like throwing a little smoother. I think my nose angle and my release gets better. So I've turned a lot of understable discs over. And the Detour just seems to be that like I'm able to manipulate it enough to just have a slight right. I wish I could get some more out of it, but then I start burning. But I can also push it straight, which is why I kind of think I could get rid of the hex, use the Detour for the straight shots, and then the fission pyro could be the straight that will always still fade. But that's all just how it works in my head. We'll see how that works on the actual course.
Yeah, totally fair. Totally fair. And I think that you're right. And that nose angle gets fixed. Another thing that might help nose angle, at least on your fairway drivers, or honestly, your bigger drivers, is not going for like a Colton Montgomery level, like reach down low, but just like focusing on that launch angle a little bit. I'm finding with a ton of my students, I'm just having them mess around, like, cause they'll have tech disc during lessons and things like that. And I'll be like, I just want you to throw, like, stand here, don't care about any other number, throw to like 10 degrees launch angle, like just try to find 10 degrees. And they're like, okay. And then just throwing to 10 degrees launch, you just watch their nose angle just like completely drop to closer to even. So like I said, I don't think like going Colton Montgomery where you're like scraping the ground before you throw the disc. That's probably not it for most people. Obviously it works for him. Colton throws farther than me, probably farther than I'll ever throw, but finding that like somewhat further launch, could help with the drivers as well. There is a putter that you have in your bag that we at Foundation, obviously big fans of, the Shaman. How'd you come across a Shaman?
I just think Gateway is really cool. I started putting with Wizards. I don't putt with them anymore, but like there's just something really interesting about Gateway. I think part of it is I really just love their logo that feels very like 90s like skate shop sticker esque, and the fact that they do all these like magic things are pretty sweet. So I was just looking for an understable putter. I was throwing a PA5. I bought it because it like the stamp on that one had a moose on it, and I'm a big fan of moose. But it was just a little too understable, and I found myself just like absolutely turfing it all the time. So the Shaman, I can put some power on it and get it to just turn nice, or it's one of my straightest discs by putting the Hyzer on it and letting it just keep pushing and pushing and pushing straight.
So I completely agree. I think that there was All-Stars this year, was it, Brad? Where it felt like half the, like, if you weren't Brody, Hunter, or Trevor, almost everyone, it seemed like, was just chucking Shamans all over that course.
Yeah, it has a following, that's for sure. And for good reason. It's one of those really fun discs, like you said it, Andrew, where like it really becomes a different disc, the amount of power you put into it, which is, I think, just really kind of fun. I think that's why Connor loves it too.
So are you?
I also used to play a Shaman in WoW Classics, so. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm putting with the PA3.
Okay, man. Andrew, you've opened up a whole world for me, because if you said WoW Classic, it means you're Horde, which is that's tough because we're on opposite sides of the table there. But that's fine. That's fine.
It's a rough one, yeah.
Horde was way cooler. I went Alliance because all the cool people and the good players were on Horde, so I wanted competition and wanted to keep smashing children with the on the Horde side in Battlegrounds. So you're putting with PA3s. I would be remiss. One of our big listeners, his name's Wes, would be upset with us if we didn't talk about the tomb. So what's the tomb do for you?
It's my I don't know if I want to call it an overstable putter, but it's a putter that will fly and will fade. And it's not going to accidentally turn over on me. It feels nice on a forehand, like a nice touchy upshot forehand or something like that. Flies pretty straight. Yeah, I just really like it. I'm debating getting one in Halo to just be a little more stable, but I don't really have that overstable putter slot. I just have not found one I liked, and I've tried a million of them. But it's not too deep. I don't really love deep putters throwing them, so it just kind of finally clicked for me, and that's what I've been using.
Yeah. Is there a world, do you think, if you went with a Halo, that one of your zones would be in trouble?
It's hard for a zone. I mean, maybe one of my zones to be in trouble, but I do really like two zones. Just one is just like a newer one that constantly gets rotated out, and the other is by one I've had forever that is just like your blankie, right?
Yep.
Like, I'm scared of this shot. I need the thing that I trust the most, and that's that Jawbreaker ESP zone.
One of the best plastics Discraft has ever released. Not sure why we're not just making that a stock available plastic. I think you'd get so many more converts. Like, my favorite passion I've ever thrown was the ESP Jawbreaker. Have you tried any other stuff in the ESP Jawbreaker, Andrew?
I've not. I'd probably throw a lot more Discraft if they had more things in that weren't just the one-off tournament special edition versions.
Totally. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, well, Brad, you want to jump into fairways? I'll let you since you know where you were at, I want you to kind of ask questions on the Tesla Escape side of things, FD1, so that you kind of get some insight on what might be the most helpful here.
For sure. Well, first of all, I think the Tesla is just in there because it's the coolest one I've ever seen. Who doesn't love the bell? For those of you who are not watching on Disc RPM with us, you're missing out. That is a sweet, sweet Tesla. It has the Taco Bell on it. I think my only real question, I mean, you kind of gave us the Sphinx really, like you said, it's your flip up, it'll turn, but it's going to fade for you. So that makes sense why you want that. It's kind of a line hitter or, kind of a woods kind of disc. Really, if you just I've thrown the Tesla and Escape, and I would argue for me, they're not super different. So kind of tell me the difference between your Escape and your Tesla.
Sure. And this might be a nose angle Hyzer release thing for me. The Tesla felt super stable to me at first. It's gotten beaten a bit more. It's working a little better, but to me, the Tesla, and that's why the numbers changed a bit, there's not really any turn on it. Mm-hmm. I can just crush it, really hard flat, and it's going to fade over and I'll push, but I have not flipped it. Where the Escapes is the Supreme plastic, and that's got some understability, or, it feels like the -1. And when I really, even on a Hyzer angle, when I put a lot on that flips up and that just pushes and it does fade at the end. That's my long tunnel shot that fades that has to go left or even just be straight. That Escape is what I just lace for long tunnel shots.
Okay, that makes sense. I think I'm trying to remember if I feels like I threw a plasma Tesla, and it was pretty much what you're describing. It kind of has a little bit of flip or a little tiny bit of turn, kind of pushes really straight, and it did fade. So I guess there's definitely a difference between the Escape and the Tesla. But do you feel like you have a lot of control in your 9-speed area just overall? If you're any type of confidence type shot, are you bumping down to your Tesla and Escape versus Destroyer Wraith, even if it's a little further, if you're prioritizing line hitting or landing?
I guess that's kind of a good way to describe how I change between the Tesla and the Escape is the Escape is distance for in the woods. The Tesla is lack of distance outside of the woods. I'm okay with it. It skips so much more than my Escape does. If I'm not powering down on a shot, but just a not as long shot that's open, I like my Tesla. but I don't trust it in the woods because I can't flip it up to really ride straight, and it's going to fade hard, and that punishes in some of the courses around me.
Mm-hmm. How's your Tesla feel on forehand?
I do throw it a lot on forehand. It's kind of like in the in between on how much I'm putting on it, and for some reason happens to be my like where I start messing things up. I either like roll my wrist or I saw off really hard for some reason on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is my forehand disc in between like the Emperor and like sometimes I throw the FD1, but more so the Pyro and Deflector.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And yeah, I even truthfully like the Crave and the FD1, I kind of just jumped over. I think the Crave to me is like one of the straightest flying, like I'll call it a 6-speed. Like I don't know how I feel about 6.5, but 6-speed I've ever thrown, and it just goes so far, so straight for so long. So I kind of skipped over that in the FD1, honestly, because I mean, really, your Tesla, like your Tesla versus, let's just say, your Emperor. Like, what's the distance difference in both of those for you on backhand and forehand?
I would probably throw my Tesla at like something between like 275 and 300, and then if it's going over that, then I just usually throw the Emperor or or the Destroyer. And then like it comes down to if I'm afraid I'm gonna go a little too far because of OB or like water or something, then I'll go down to the Tesla if I'd rather just play it safe.
Gotcha. So you are feeling some difference then.
Yeah, there's definitely I'm not great at this. Is like probably my biggest weakness on the field is like sitting out there and being like, how far away is that? This is what I should shoot for that. And then immediately seeing like, that was exactly what I wanted to, and completely too far or way too short. So
right.
I need to get better at that part.
Okay.
So I can't tell you
sense.
numbers very well, unfortunately.
No, I think that's all, Robbie. I think because what we're about to talk about, I don't even feel like really bumps into the Tesla, in my personal opinion. I think it's like a whole, because when Robbie, this was a different, because usually Robbie reaches out to the guest. I reached out to you, you kind of sent over your bag. So I did get to see it before. And, but I let Robbie kind of guide on where he thinks, we need to work. And there's definitely like we're missing some overstability on that even 9 and 7 speed kind of area. So I really feel like these discs are going to be, I don't know, based on like the kind of the reference points you gave us on your distance and like the points of your game and kind of some other hints you've given us. I think this is really like a good area probably at this point in your game to start working on. So I'm glad we kind of went with the overstable part. So I'll let Robbie kind of guide the conversation, but I do feel like it's probably some of your woes or decision making can probably be like maybe helped out, and maybe if nothing else, it's a gateway into other kind of decision making at the top end of your bag.
Yeah, and I mean, cool. From the decision making points, like it's one of those super flippy discs can help in the woods because you're like, I can pump in my Hyzer and like they're going to be doing so much movement internally that it helps me stay on the line. But then there's also a world that like being able to know, and the same light of like, if I have something stable, I can put it on that line of stability and it's just never going to move off of it. So fascinating on both sides of it. So Brad, you threw a couple discs today. What'd you throw? Threw a few discs, actually.
I threw 3 different molds that I think always get lumped together, which is why I wanted to throw them all together. They're all ones I've thrown before and bagged at one point or another. And one I think I'm getting ready to go back to personally. So I did this was a little selfish too, Andrew, because this is kind of like affirming a few things for me as well as helping you out. So everyone wins here, and Robbie gets to talk to us. So he wins too. So I threw the Raptor. I know you have an unbagged Raptor, so we'll get to that in a second. I threw the Phoenix in Eternal Plastic. The Raptor's in Z. I don't know if it's crystal or not. I think it's just regular Z or Z Swirl. And then I have a Halo Firebird. So I threw all very overstable discs, and I think they all, at least in my circles and people I talk to, all kind of get lumped into the same category. So I did want to throw them like all against one another for sure. 2, the Raptor Firebird like kind of combo you kind of hear about that, whether you're an Innova Discraft guy. But then like the Phoenix is kind of out here in kind of a niche brand, but is very much in the same realm as those other discs.
Cool.
Yeah, I especially know that you did a Halo Firebird. This makes it even more interesting to me because obviously we see some Halo plastic represented in the bag, so we know that like plastic can really resonate. So we knew we wanted overstable, Brad. So what kind of angles were you testing these on, and how were they flying?
So I really tried to go my normal release, Hyzer release, flex lines, because I think this is really something I'm trying to like learn and take more advantage of, is like throwing like a nice flex line with something overstable. I also threw them on like my normal forehand and then some like choppy Annie forehand. So I tried to give them kind of the gambit. So I guess just going down through them, I'll just kind of give you the Raptor. So this particular Raptor, it's 170, 172. It's a little lighter. I will say out of the three of them, the Raptor has and will continue to feel the best in my hand. I like the low shoulder, and I really feel like I can dig it into the back of my hand when I'm throwing forehand, especially. And I like to throw thumbers and stuff too, so like it feels good on that. On my normal release, the Raptor, it proved it in the field when I was throwing. I can throw the Raptor like farther than both of these discs, because it's like the overstability doesn't really kick in until the very end, and then it just dumps for me. So that's probably a lot to do with my throw and my release and the amount of spin I put on it. But I love that. I've always loved it for that reason. Even if I'm throwing a flex line, it's actually like it kind of holds that flex just a little bit longer than the other two discs, which I'm a big fan of. But I mean, it's an overstable disc. Like it was cool. I had some wind today, so I threw it into some headwind, and I threw it like with a tailwind too. And I think, it definitely still is a wind fighter, which I like. But it's not so overstable that I don't feel like I can use it or throw it. I feel like it's very trustworthy is how I would describe it. And then on forehand, it's just money. Like I feel like I can really smash into it and get it to just like cruise straight and then just dump and skip, which I love that shot. There's a lot of utility in that shot. And even on a flex line, I feel like I can just snap it over and kind of hammer over it on Annie and really get a nice flex out of it. So, and then it has a lot of ground action, which I think is, can be very useful, can be troublesome depending on what situation you're in. Mm-hmm. I'm going to kind of go to like, still don't hear me saying this wrong, but still very overstable, right? But I'm going to go from what I think is like the least overstable to the most overstable. So I'm going to put the Phoenix in the middle, especially in this Eternal plastic. It kind of flies exactly like I'd expect it to. It does have like a little bit higher of a shoulder. It's not completely flat, really, like the Raptor is. Still very comfortable in the hand, like no weird lip or flashing or anything like that. It definitely, I don't know, and I didn't really think about this till right now. It does feel a little faster than the Firebird or Raptor. I'm still pretty sure it's a 9-speed though, allegedly. But I would just say everything I said, just a little bit more overstable, and that the tailwind didn't affect it like at all. So, which is kind of nice. Okay. And I love throwing like the Raptor. I didn't say this. When I started on big spike Hyzer, I felt like I could push it up in the air before it like fell back down. It wasn't like a boomerang effect. You know what I mean? If you ever throw discs that are like too fast for you or too overstable, it doesn't feel like it's getting ready to like push back to you. Same thing with the Phoenix. Big spike Hyzers were great. I just threw it about 50 feet shy of the Raptor. Yeah, little bit about the same ground action, a little bit more right to left movement for me. Definitely came out of the Annie forehand and the Annie like backhand a little faster than the Raptor. So I would just push it like a little bit more overstable, but pretty much identical flight to the Raptor. Just maybe give it like a half tick more stability, in my opinion. Loved it on the Annie forehand as well, but that shoulder made it maybe a little bit more difficult for me to kind of my thumb to hang on to it. I didn't feel like I could really pump it like I could the Raptor. To be fair, some of this may be like subconscious confidence as well too, because I did used to bag Raptors. So I'll kind of just like caveat that. And then definitely the most overstable for me was the Halo Firebird. Just beef, just pure beef. I mean, there were a couple I think one of the first couple throws I was trying to throw just on my normal angle, I like barely like got it out past 200 feet. And I was like, man, I'm about to crush this to like push it out there. But what I lacked in distance pushing forward, I got that right to left movement, if that makes sense. So I felt like I could just horseshoe this thing around if I needed to, especially on like a Hyzer angle. So like think about your angle, like this thing is just going to be like, okay, do I want a giant horseshoe shape around something? Do I need to get up over top of a tree and directly back down? And then also like, it was kind of fun on a flex forehand too, because I really could just kind of throw it like that kind of angle, like at a 45 degree, and it was no problem. Again, tailwind, no problem. Wind, it just like is like what wind to me, except the headwind, right? I mean, it was definitely, if I threw that nose up, it was like crashing out. So just user beware. So yeah, I put it definitely on the other end of the stability spectrum. So all overstable. Raptor's probably this particular Raptor is like the least of the overstable, and then Halo, Thunderbird, or Firebird is at the other end of like beefcake overstable. Robbie, is that what you'd expect for these discs with my arm speed?
For sure. I mean, when I recognized that Halo Firebird from the subscription box, it was when I had Firebirds in the bag trying to go mold minimalization. It was my like, this is what my Sextons do, which is like usable, and then this is like utility, super beef. Okay, it's like 90% of the time I'm throwing it, it's on some form of flex to get flight out of it. So with you on those, I guess really in shaping like you mentioned, Andrew, you have a Raptor in the unbagged section. Is there a reason it ended up unbagged?
Yeah, I guess I can kind of explain why I don't bag this slot at all, even though I'm sure most people would argue it's like the most popular like slot in most people's bag. I think when learning and watching a million videos of like how to throw a forehand properly, because it's so much different in Ultimate, I got so scared of like learning this choppy forehand. That's the only thing that you're doing, that I like almost probably messed up my Hyzer angle even more, because I was so scared of being over and not learning how to throw an actual forehand. So like that super overstable stuff, I was trying not to learn how to do that. So I just don't chop anything really. And I think I need to realize that that's a super legitimate throw in certain situations, which I guess I don't really have something now. I have the deflector in a much smaller version or slower version of that. And then I guess my other reason for it, and this was a conversation I had with my friends that got me into it, and maybe it's a dumb one, but I hope someone else out there has thought it as well. But like, you see the speed of 9 and expect a lot more distance, but I think I have to look at that slot not as a distance 9 speed, but more of just straight utility. Who cares what the speed is? This is a wind fighting absolute knife, like utility disc for very few shots, but you need it to be extremely consistent. And I think that's why I've just like not really looked for that spot. And when you throw it at my Hyzer angle, it's horrible. So I just need to start chopping, I think, and being ready for like a super knifing backhand.
Yeah, I think
so. That's why the Raptor's not in there. Yeah.
I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Robbie, my thought process in general here was, I think, because you when you start talking about your angle and your Hyzer angle and your ultimate background, is there maybe some validity, and I'm asking Robbie, I guess, specifically, to try to like learn a little bit about different angles and even like Hyzer angles, but maybe to give you confidence you're not going to roll it over? Is there like benefit to starting to work in some of these really overstable discs to kind of like get the feel of the motion, even if you're like not on the course trying to hit lines with it? Does that make sense? Like, because there's no fear, right? There, I think there's like, fear is like such a silly word. We're talking about disc golf, I guess, for for goodness sake. But the
fine.
fear of like rolling over a disc, you know what I mean? Like you don't want to look like an idiot. You don't want to feel like a fool, and like you don't want to feel like you don't know what you're doing. But even just like trusting the angle a little bit. I don't know. Is there some validity to that, Robbie, or am I completely off base on that?
No, I mean, I think that fear of execution when you're in the crunch, like in that crunch time moment, is true in any performance sport. And like I think about the fact that when like I'm trying to really think about this from the lens of the ultimate side, and like practice for us was, okay, handlers, you're going to sit here and we're going to put like our best defenders on you, and you're just going to practice breaking the force, like practice breaking the force over and over again, so that you have what this shot shape feels like, and you know how to do that. Which most of the time that it felt like we were breaking a force, it was like we were trying to go over top of it, which almost all ultimate lids I'm throwing on some form of Hyzer. So like I had to teach myself to get used to that. And when you talk about that fear of like throwing forehands and it's so different from ultimate, I vividly remember, okay, I am giving up on my ultimate forehand to become better at my disc golf forehand. And now when I throw lids, like if I throw an actual lid, I'm like, oh baby, I have to like, I feel like I can't put anything on it because it pops over like that. So the overstability side, giving some comfort there, totally good. I don't know that you want to go, like personally, I don't know that you would want to go the extreme of like the Halo Firebird, because that is just super, super beef. But since you already have a Raptor in your possession, I like the idea of the Raptor because it's going to hold stability for sure. But it's not the most. Before you jumped on the call, Brad, like I told you, like I think the Raptor is. I didn't include it in the conversation normally because it is one of the least stable options in this overstable 9-speed spot. So I kind of love personally that Phoenix, because it gives you the best of both worlds in sort of those flights. But yeah, I
was kind of leaning toward the Phoenix as well, because I feel like, again, if we're thinking from a like comfortability standpoint, as you're learning, again, you're going to be a quick study, right? But as you're learning, like kind of that choppy Annie flex line forehand, or I don't know if you've thrown thumbers or anything like that. It's kind of fun to throw on those. Even like a flex backhand, it is going to give you a little bit more grace. Not that the Raptor is going to like burn over or roll over, but I think you might be able to like exaggerate or figure out where your exaggeration points are with the Phoenix, maybe just like a touch more. Plus it's a really fun disc. And like, when I used to bag jackalopes, I really liked the Eternal plastic jackalopes, but like getting them beat up a little bit, because they get like feel really good in your hand as far as like a grip perspective. And they do like beat in pretty quickly. So you probably get to Raptor status if you're playing often, probably get there pretty quick if you're giving yourself a chance to throw it.
Yeah. And another factor that I might consider is like, if you're not in love with the Tesla, like if it's one of those where it's like,
it's got a Taco Bell stamp, I'm in love with it. Sorry.
That's fair. That's fair. And that's where I'm like, hey, dies can be redone. You know what I'm saying? And so like,
yeah, true.
Yeah. But it's like, to me, if the Tesla and the Raptor are going to feel pretty similar over time. So I could see that creating some clog and some confusion. So I agree with Brad, like jumping over to the Phoenix is going to give you more time to kind of adjust to that and get used to it. Because I think if in that same time period, if you went with the Raptor, instead of it dropping from a Phoenix to a Raptor, it would drop from a Raptor down to a Tesla. And now you're like, okay, do I just start this process over again? And now I'm doing the same thing that I'm doing with my zones, where it's like they fly for a certain amount of time and then I just have to kick them out because they're not reliably overstable anymore. That's where this time slot, and like also a lot of people will say drivers take a long time to beat in. This slot, I feel like beats in the fastest because you're throwing it hard. And when it misses and it hits a tree, it hits it hard. So
it hits the ground hard. Fast. It skips hard. You're using it to skip on the ground. So yeah, I think they season in pretty quickly.
Yeah. So, how's the Phoenix sound? Andrew?
Sounds great. I like mint a lot. I have a jackalope as well. That's out of the bag right now, but I've thought about putting it back in that Sphinx position or something. But yeah, mint's awesome. I love them a lot. So that sounds awesome.
Yeah. So I think we get this in the mail for you. And would you be interested in coming on a future episode so we can hear, did it welcome you to that slot, or were you like, no, I still don't love it? So would you be willing to come on and share future thoughts with it?
Yeah, for sure. That'd be awesome.
Dude. Awesome. Well, Andrew, we appreciate you coming on, man. Yeah, we'll get this in the mail for you and look forward to chatting with you in a future episode. Another one.
Another one.
Brad,
I just look like a walrus. That's all there is to it. Sorry, go ahead.
Man, just focused on. Honestly, once we talked about it, there was a couple moments in there where I looked down and I was like, "Ugh, that thing is. My beard is looking rough," but it's fine. It's fine. It wasn't looking rough. It is very fun having someone in tech. Like, if you just want to see crystal clear, picture perfect image,
there you go.
Go check out the YouTube video if you're an audio listener.
For sure.
Yeah, it's in the content creation world. There's like, it really is fun how content creation carries over so many different genres. And then we have these weird hobbies that like bring us all together.
Very cool.
Always here for that. Other cool things. There's a whole warehouse full of them, Brad.
True.
So what's new in the warehouse, sir?
So we got all kinds of cool stuff this week. Real quick, firing them off. We have the Evelina Solonen World Champion Swirly Star Destroyers. That's fun. We have all of Innova's glow line they just put out. So like Shrike, Leopard 3, I think Mystere. I don't know. I'm misnaming maybe. I usually have them right beside me, but quite a few really cool glow discs. So make sure you check those out. We have some TI Zone GTs. We have Fly Die Kratos and Big Z Swarm. We also have kind of like a little lot we picked up down at USDGC of some Discraft exclusives like Glow ESP Paul Macbeth line stuff. We have actually, ironically enough, these Raptors. This was a certified use that we were getting ready to put online, but I was like, well, I'll throw it for the episode. Had a blemish on it where it got dropped on the ground. But we have these cool Raptors. We have Impacts. We have Z Flex Jawbreaker drives with a mini Page Pierce stamp. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like Proto Athena. We have Proto Z Athenas. Crazy stuff. They're just crazy. All kinds of, just recently restocked as your best friend. We also have the Year of the Dragon stuff, Robbie, from Trilogy. So Captains, Justice, Mac Truth, and one other thing that I'm forgetting, but all kinds of cool stuff there as well. So yeah, definitely make sure you check those out. And like, Connor Shamans, we were talking about Connor Shamans. Those are going back live if you're one of those folks or have been trying to get one. And last but certainly not least, we have the online release of the Robbie C Birdie Blend Wizard with the actual Robbie C logo stamp on it.
Yes, sir. We, dude, I just switched to them this week. So I took 2 home with me from USDGC, and y'all loving them. It's just such a fun plastic, and it's funny because I think about Birdie Blend, but I have like all my practice putters are not Birdie Blends, which feels great. So it's just like when I think Wizard, this is now like the plastic that is my dreams, and I'm loving. But because I've been putting with these practice ones for a year, they're all like, they all have my dream feel that I wanted. And so now that I'm on Freshies, I'm like, okay, they're still not even that slick. As hard as they are and stiff as they are, they're not slick, which feels immaculate to know that it starts grippy with a firm putter, which is something that I just felt like wasn't really on the market at all. And then the fact that they season in to just be absolutely gorgeous feels great.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I think there's only like maybe a handful of subscription boxes left for the month. So make sure you check those out. Those are great. And then just stay on board I just wrapped up the details for the November one. It is going to be crazy, crazy, crazy. So excited about that. And then December is just as good. So, make sure you check out that. And, as always, we appreciate everyone for supporting us, supporting In the Bag Discs, Foundation, the podcast, everything. It means the world to us. So thank you for that. We couldn't do what we do without you. We love you all. And, when you're looking for new discs or new swag items, apparel, just come over to foundationdisc.com, get it in the mail. If it's good, keep it on your head, throw it on your back, or keep it in the bag. We'll see y'all next week.